And we'll be back with more spirited debate right after this. We'll be back with a faith panel and talking about Roe v. Wade, as well as some prayer at West Point that's being challenged. Right back. Battle is the first topic for our panel. And joining me on the set, Sapreet Kaur, Executive Director of the Sikh Coalition, Robert V. Taylor, author of A New Way to Be Human. Okay, that's Robert. That's Sapreet. There we go. 7 Spiritual Pathways to Becoming Fully Alive. And Rabbi Steve Burg, Eastern Director of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Did you take Rhonda's position?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Rhonda
Okay.
Barrett. I knew Rhonda.
She's great.
Okay, we'll talk about what she's doing afterwards. Okay. 7-2 decision in 1973, the Supreme Court decided that abortion should be legal. That is an overwhelming ruling. Different world back then, but still the polls show that we're about the same on how people feel about it. I'm just reading from a Gallup poll, 52% of Americans saying abortion should be legal under certain circumstances, 25% wanting it legal in all cases, 20% wanting it outlawed in all cases. This is roughly the same breakdown in the 1970s. And obviously we're a religious show, so we're trying to get from a religious point of view. Rabbi, what is your take on where we are with the abortion debate, and what, from a Jewish perspective, is the feeling about abortion?
Yeah, I mean, the debate is definitely passionate. People are passionate on both sides, and they're definitely coming out and speaking out about it. You know, the Jewish point of view is a little bit of a different point of view. There are certain cases it may be allowed, in certain cases it's not. But to me, that's religious law. Here, really, what the debate about is the laws of the United States, and the ability for both sides to be passionate. I was just at the inauguration. We were just talking about it, and literally there was a anti-abortion activist that climbed to this humongous tree. And was screaming the entire inauguration, screaming.
Oh, we did hear that on the...
It was unbelievable. And then someone turned to me and they said, you know what, in another country they would just shoot him. Ooh, you know, and then we said, you know what, that's why this is a great country, because people can speak out. So, you know, lots of folks can be watching on both sides. Let them make their case, and then, you know, the courts of the land really have to make that decision. They have made it, and if it needs to be revisited, they will. But, you know, we have to wait and see.
Sapreet, what is it, you know, we don't get the Sikh, called the Sikh viewpoint on a lot of things, but from a Sikh point of view, what is their feel on abortion?
So in the Sikh tradition, there isn't anything explicit that says when life begins, whether it begins at conception or whether it begins at birth. And so, like many other ethical questions, Sikhs are asked to look at the scriptures and then reflect personally for their specific situation. And so in so many ways, you know, I think that from a faith perspective, you have to deeply reflect and engage in what you think is right. And here this becomes a debate that the country is having. A decision was made, as we said, in the 70s, and it becomes a rights issue. But from the Sikh perspective, everyone needs to reflect on what's right for them in the circumstances that they're in specifically.
Robert?
Well, you know, within the Christian tradition, there are many different perspectives on this issue, as you know.
Oh, yeah.
And certainly within my tradition, we support the right of a woman to make choices
now, are
about
you
her...
a part of the Anglican tradition?
Exactly.
Okay,
exactly.
Right. Okay. Which is the Church of England.
That's right, the Episcopal Church in the U.S. And so I think part of where I come from is that the choice is an essential part of spirituality and of the religious life. And so when I look at the demand that abortion be outlawed, I have two reactions to it. One, that seems to me like an exercise of trying to impose big government and saying to women, government will say to you that you do not have a right to make choices about your reproductive health, about your body. And then the second is, I just think we need to lower the temperature on the debate. You know, and the folks I've counseled over the years who've come to talk about this issue, and often it's married couples or it might be women coming to talk, and the fact that they're coming to talk means that they're troubled. I've never met anyone who says, gee, I'm all gung-ho for abortion.
Well, this is one of the things that I think that is very interesting, is that we never really get endorsement of, yeah, go out and get that abortion. We don't see celebrity endorsements of abortion like we do for same-sex marriage or for any of those other kinds of things. So clearly it's a very, very different animal here. And also, I wonder, and I also interviewed a bunch of women who were actually very regretful of their abortions, and they're suffering emotionally. They're trying to heal those emotional wounds. Do we get so focused on the political debate that we forget to really talk about what it does emotionally to any woman who has an abortion?
I believe that we do, and I think that in the process of doing that, we give power to those who want to hold very loud megaphones about the positions on the extremes of the issue. And, you know, wouldn't it be amazing if we had a group of women who've made choices not to have an abortion and those who have made choices actually engaging in some public conversation, because I think in those stories we'll find some of the heart of the struggle around this issue that people live with.
Well, you know, and what about, we focus so much on the women's rights because it's a woman's body, but in recent years there has been sort of an uprising of how men feel about it, because they have no choice, actually. I guess that's what their point was, is that they're grieving because their child that would have had is not there anymore, or they don't want to be saddled with a woman having a child that they don't want to pay for. So you've got what about men's rights?
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, we keep using the word here, struggle, and that's what religion's all about. People struggle. You know, that notion that you're born and you just make it through life and everything's gone great, it just doesn't happen. There's tragedy in people's lives, there's other things, and people struggle. Women will struggle with this issue, men struggle, and I thought that was a great point, that's what this is about, and it gets lost almost on either side. Even the people that are saying a woman should have a right to choose are not saying exactly what you were saying, let's go. It's a struggle, and it's painful, and I think that we need to focus more on that.
Yeah, Sapreet?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think so much of the issue starts to get to people making assumptions about the choices others are making. So not appreciating the inner conflict that a woman would have to make such a big decision. And then the assumption that life is not respected by someone who would have an abortion, and likewise that the health of the mother or the woman is completely discounted by somebody who says that abortion should never happen. I think people have sort of run to the extremes of this discussion without thinking of the real human struggle and element.
There is a struggle
that
here.
happens.
One of the things that when you transport yourself back 40 years to the Supreme Court decision when they made it 7-2, it is an overwhelming decision. But one of the things that convinced them was that in case of rape, in the case of incest, all very tragic things that women could not get themselves out of if they just happened to be pregnant, or in the case of that the baby was deformed in some way, or that it would be to save her life, for the mother's health. These were all issues that influenced this decision. But what we're seeing today is that many abortions are just elective. Many abortions are done by women who maybe were not using birth control, or using it as birth control, or just were careless. The mood has changed. Should we change the debate? Should we change what we talk about?
Well, you know, I think we are beginning to change that in terms of a generational shift. I think there's still a primary question about women having a choice about their own bodies. But what I've seen in the last 20 years is that, you know, 20 years ago, women would talk about the fact that I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
Now, when I talk to young couples in their 20s and 30s, they always talk about pregnancy collectively. We are pregnant.
Yes.
We are having a baby. So I think there's an interesting demographic and cultural shift going on about relationship.
You made a great point. I want to read the chat first before I talk about that point. It says, this is from Lady Griffin or something. It says, unlike men, women cannot just walk away from the baby when they are pregnant like the man can. And that's a very good point. And it really speaks to your issue, is that maybe the issue is about the relationship between men and women. And maybe we should be focused on how we treat each other sexually, how we understand our relationships, and how we are either committed or not committed to them, and not abuse the privilege of sex. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think there's something you were saying about it's our, you know, two people made this baby, two people maybe should make the decision or not.
Oh, I think that is the ideal and the healthy situation. Now, we all know that in those extreme cases, that dynamic probably doesn't exist.
A back of Chevy just comes to my mind, actually.
You know, when President Obama was running, I thought one of the great things, and this is the first time he was running, he really talked about the role of the father in a child's life based on his life experience. Yes. And to me, that's also powerful. This is all part of the conversation, you know, of creating, you know, both sides have to have an opinion, but also they have to be able to come together, and that's the
Absolutely. The discussion about Roe v. Wade, abortion, never is going to end. This is one of the top conflictual kinds of things that we're going to talk about in our lives. So we're going to take a break right now and come back with more. Are we taking a break, right? Okay, we are taking a break. All right, we'll be back with more spirited debate right after this. All right, we're back with the faith panel on the spirited debate. So we're going to go on to our next topic, which is prayer. Prayer has been a part of West Point Military Academy since its beginnings more than 200 years ago. But there's a current controversy starting when an atheist cadet complained about the overt prayers at many school events like award dinners, holiday celebrations, and graduations. Americans United for Separation of Church and State sending a letter to West Point warning the academy that government-sponsored prayers at formal school events violates the First Amendment of the Constitution.
The United States military at its best defends the fundamental rights of people, including the right to believe in one God or many gods or no God, and West Point ought to give the same consideration to its own cadets. Unfortunately, it does not.
In a statement to Fox News, the military academy says, quote, "The United States Military Academy respects the fundamental tenet of our nation that church and state are separate. As such, prayer is voluntary. Cadets may opt to pray. They may decline. This is a personal decision left to each individual cadet." Jonathan Lutwak, a 1999 West Point grad, agrees, the Jewish cadet, saying he never felt coerced or pressured to pray at academy events.
Prayers are said, but it's just a benediction or an invocation. It's typically non-denominational. It's not mandatory. So you do have to stand there for a minute, but you don't have to bow your head. You don't have to pray. It's just part of a tradition.
Now, so far, no lawsuits have been filed, and Americans United for Separation of Church and State does say that since December, it has received several complaints about over religiosity at other U.S. military academies. Let's get the faith panel in on this. You know, Rabbi, I'm not picking on you, but there was a Jewish cadet that talked to us, and so I saw you shaking your head, saying, yeah.
Well, I did something else as you were introing. I pulled a $1 bill out of my pocket just to check this.
I thought you were giving us money. I didn't know what was that about.
Here you go. But it does say, "In God we trust," and there is, you know, the founding fathers did believe in the concept of God, and the fact that you have prayer. If someone doesn't want to have to pray, there's no one forcing anyone to pray, and I think this is a long-standing tradition. And quite frankly, the folks that have to go out and fight for our country, God plays a real role there. And to have, you know, a couple moments at the beginning, I see nothing wrong with it, and I think most people would agree.
But there was a sort of cohesiveness, or homogeneity, I guess we'd call it, about the beliefs of the American citizens, American soldiers, 200 years ago. Not all were Christian, but they sort of lived in a Christian worldview kind of thing. And so, but things are different today. I mean, you've got much more diversity in terms of religions.
You know, as I understand it, West Point recruits Americans of all backgrounds and all faith traditions, and I think faith plays a very big role in people's lives, and as does prayer. And if they're optional, and if the prayers are interfaith in nature, then it seems to stay consistent with our values as Americans.
Robert?
I think the issue here is really the question of coercion, that many of the cadets are saying, you know, they felt coerced. And, you know, so for some people that says, are we treading on the ground of implying some sort of establishment of religion in some way? And I think to Sapreet's point that, you know, and yours, that Pew documents, you know, this huge increase in the number of folks who claim to be no religious affiliation.
Right.
But within that group, and that includes 30% of under 35-year-olds, an overwhelming number believe in at least a higher power of some kind. And so, you know, I think the question is, how does this happen at West Point or other places in the Defense Forces without the sense of coercion? And what does it look like if you have invocations that are offered by a Sikh and a Jew and a Christian and a Muslim and so on, reflecting some of that very diversity that exists within the armed forces?
The only group that really almost doesn't fit in, though, is an atheist. And this is, I think, where his case maybe has some validity. That he doesn't believe in any God. He doesn't believe in a moment of prayer. He doesn't believe that there is a higher power. So what do you do in these cases if your Constitution says there is a, well, the Constitution doesn't say it, but if we've interpreted that as meaning there's a separation of church and state?
You know, I have friends that are atheists. I've had this conversation with them. And you know, even if you're an atheist, there is something about a moment of reflection. And there is something about thinking about it, even if you think there's no God and after we die we just, we go back into the ground. There is something, there's just spending some time in thought and pondering, and, so I don't really understand. But my friends who are atheists have also said that. They don't, if there's some kind of moment of prayer, they just don't pray. They think about family or whatever they think about.
Yeah.
So I don't think that, again, I think you said it beautifully, if it's optional and you're not telling anyone to do it in any one specific religion, no one is saying you have to do that prayer. You can just think about how to be a good person.
Yeah. Yeah. Last thoughts here, because we're going to...
It made me think of something. I've been a long-standing Girl Scout. I'm still very active, and a tradition that exists in the Girl Scouts often when you're starting an event is actually to have a moment of reflection, and sometimes a poem is read or thoughts are shared, and you can use that time and space to reflect on anything you want to. I think as long as it's optional, and anyone can use that time and space for their own, it works.
And a couple seconds.
Certainly my atheist friends reflect a profound spirituality. They may just not name it that. And, it's possible for West Point to invite an atheist to offer a reflection.
Maybe so. All right, I want to thank you very much, Rabbi Steve Burg and Sapreet Kaur and Robert Taylor. Thank you all for being here on the Faith Panel.
Great to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah.